construction of their launch vehicle.
Douglas McAllister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister outline how the Department is working to ensure that the UK space sector is a launchpad for innovation and investment and create skilled jobs, both commercial and in the defence sector, across Scotland and the UK?
He is absolutely right. We have space skills across the UK, but we have very particular expertise in Scotland. I enjoyed visiting Glasgow recently to see how all parts of the Glasgow economy supports the space sector, particularly in the small satellite manufacturing sector. Several launch operations, including Orbex, are targeting orbital launches from Saxavor's spacecraft in Shetland this year. This is a testament to the innovation taking place right across the UK and in Scotland.
Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If that first space launch happens, and I believe it will happen at Saxaford in Unst, the Secretary of State will be very welcome to join us when it does. But in order for the UK space sector as a whole to recognise the full opportunities that we have here, we need to get serious about the delivery of the government's space strategy. The NEO last year identified a number of challenges that strategy faces. When will we hear the government's response to it?
I agree with the honourable gentleman. When we came into office, we did not inherit a clear strategy for delivering on our priorities for space. That strategy is now being developed, and you can see from the investments that we are making as a department and a government into space, and the way that we are making sure that our relationship with the European Space Agency, ESA, is delivering for the British sector, because we have more grants being delivered now in the UK in the latest fund than any other country. It shows that we are delivering. Certainly when I share his enthusiasm and certainty that a launch will happen this year, and I very much look forward to being there alongside him to witness it.
Claire Hughes.
Question Mr. Ford, please speak, Mr.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure every member of the House would agree that Ofcom's reporting of mobile coverage is rather over-optimistic and doesn't reflect people's lived experience. I'm absolutely determined to change that, and Ofcom are helping me to do that.
Claire Hughes.
Constituent Leslie suffers from multiple health conditions, including epilepsy, and she lives with a constant risk of seizures. Her family rely on broadband to use the landline, but recently the broadband went down for several days, meaning she was completely unable to make calls because of the ongoing problems with mobile coverage in Llandudno. Would the Minister agree to meet with me to discuss how we safeguard vulnerable customers like Leslie and also address the issues in Llandudno?
I think she's also got a problem at one of her universities, which we're going to try and deal with as well. She's written to me. I will write back to her as soon as possible, but maybe we could shortcut that with the meeting. I'm also conscious that for medical conditions, the resilience of your connectivity is just as important as the day-to-day coverage.
The Minister for his candidness and honesty, and say he's one of the most effective, experienced and able ministers in the government. So having made those compliments, can I just encourage him? Can I encourage him to visit Shropshire, where there are still too many not spots? And perhaps one of the reasons is this country only has 4 mobile network operators. Isn't it time we had more competition? And finally, is the Shared Rural Network Agreement likely to hit its targets by the end of this year?
So the Shared Rural Network will reach its targets, but he makes a very good point, which is that, frankly, the connectivity that people think that they're getting from Ofcom simply isn't what they're actually getting. Their phone looks as if it's got lots of bars and it's saying 4G, but actually they can't even park their car, download the app to be able to do that. We've got to transform that across the whole of the UK. In the end, most of that is down to industry, and I want to make sure that we remove some of the barriers to further investment that there are in industry to make sure that we improve mobile connectivity for every single member of the House.
Susan Murray.
Number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the national conversation taking place on how we protect children online. The Online Safety Act requires all regulated end users for users and search services to comply with illegal content and child safety rules. Illegal content duties came into effect last week. I am closely monitoring the impact that these duties have on online safety.
Susan Murray.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. Many schools in my constituency of Mid and Bartonshire use mobile phones as an educational tool, yet along with this learning opportunity comes easy access to sites posting horrendous content. I would like to know how the government plans to tackle small foreign-based websites exposing people to graphic content, and what steps his department is taking to ensure that smaller platforms are adequately regulated to protect children from online harms.
I'm grateful for her question and also the manner in which she expressed it, which expresses the complexity of use of smartphones and the benefits as well as the potential harmful aspects of it too. I can assure her that as of last week, the demand to take down illegal content has now come into force. I accept also that there is still illegal content online. I am watching closely at the way that Ofcom responds to the challenges that they have, and I think in the coming days and weeks you will see the action that will show how assertive that they intend to be, and I expect them to be in doing so. They also have a task force which is looking at the small but risky sites of which she mentions. I will be looking very closely and supporting Ofcom in their requirement to act in those circumstances.
Holly Billington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The domestic abuse charity Oasis in my constituency has alerted me to the appalling situation that young women are being coerced to set up their own OnlyFans account to generate income. Can the Secretary of State outline what steps he is taking to ensure this sector can root out coercion and exploitation?
She is a champion for these issues, and Oasis, the charity, a great charity, is lucky to have her voicing their work and the needs to make these radical changes to keep people safe online here in the House of Commons. I can assure her that the situation she has described breaches several aspects of law in this country, including the need to take down illegal content. I'll be watching closely, as she will, and working with her to make sure that these new powers and the powers that are coming online are effective, and how we adapt to these challenges into the future.
Victoria College Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On my Safer Screens tour discussing online safety for children, students themselves are calling for action, whether they're talking about brain rot, the subtle but dangerous impact on their mental health, their self-esteem, their world outlook and their time. So does the Secretary of State agree with the Liberal Democrats that given this public health crisis and the massive profits that social media giants like Musk are making, that we should be looking to seek revenues from a digital service tax rather than cutting benefits to disabled families, disabled people and struggling families?
I can assure her, and as you would have heard from my previous answers, that we are determined to keep young people safe online. Online activity and the services that are offered to people in this country and around the world are adapting and evolving fast because of the speed of innovation. We need a regulatory and a legislative landscape that can keep up with that innovation, and we need a government that will make sure it is on the side of young people, vulnerable people of any age going forward, and I can assure her in this government and this Secretary of State they have it.
Michelle Welsh.
Question number 6, Mr. Speaker.
If we're to be a successful digital nation, we have to take the whole of the nation with us. That's why we were proud recently to publish our first Digital Inclusion Action Plan, the first for 10 years in this country, because precisely that, we want to take everybody with us.
Welsh.
Thank you. Too often communities, including ex-mining communities such as Ollerton, Edwinstowe, rural communities such as Farnsfield, and even in Hucknall West, people struggle to get a phone signal and access to the internet. Constituents feel that they are left behind and miss out on the new and upcoming technologies that we know improve access to online jobs, education and business opportunities. Does the Minister agree with me that we need to ensure that communities such as these are at the heart of the government's digital inclusion ambitions so that no one is left behind, especially those in deprived communities?
She's absolutely right, and her constituency exemplifies one of the issues that we face, which is that you might have relatively affluent areas but with much poorer areas cheek by jowl. And that's why in our Digital Inclusion Action Plan we've tried to make sure that we address all the different forms of digital exclusion that there are, whether that's by virtue of age, ethnicity, educational background or physical geography.
So
Speaker, lack of access to digital services prevents people from applying for jobs, studying or accessing healthcare. But CSCs such as Donate IT based in Wincanton are helping to bridge this gap by diverting IT equipment that was otherwise heading to landfill, by refurbishing the tech and distributing it to people and schools and groups who need it, helping to address digital poverty. So how does the Minister plan on supporting organisations such as this to prevent electrical waste going to landfill and tackling digital exclusion?
I'm really pleased that that's happening in her constituency, and we were pleased as a government not only to be able to say that many government departments will now be making sure that we do precisely the same thing, but also that many major employers in this country are going to do the same as well. It's crazy to chuck old kit into landfill when frankly it could be used much better to provide people with digital opportunities for the future.
Don't make Hillier on Choppiddles.
Number one, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to start by thanking Professor Sullivan for her independent review into sex and gender data. This is an important area, and we have shared the report with departments as part of our ongoing policy work. Last week, landmark online safety measures came into force, and from now on, platforms will have to act to take down illegal content. And I have just got back from the United States where, from NVIDIA's conference stage to investor meetings, my message was clear. The UK is hungry for the new era of growth that AI and emerging technology promises. As the Chancellor shares her spring statement, that is an era that I will keep working with her on to deliver.
Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State has today referenced space and AI as key drivers of growth. Closer to home in my constituency and across the country, our creative industries are huge drivers of growth, but there is a battle with AI. If their content is taken and they don't get recompense, that will damage the economy too. Is he talking to them and to the DCMS to make sure that our creative content creators are protected?
I can assure her that I am speaking to both sectors. I am determined that both sectors will get fit for the future as we face the opportunities but also the challenges. We are lucky as a country to have the second largest creative arts sector in the world and the third largest AI market in the world. This is a benefit, this is an opportunity for our country, and any challenges it poses will be navigated by this government so that both sectors are fit to exploit the opportunities that both have and for the commercial gain into the future.
Secretary of State Adam Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Luke Shipley has grown his tech startup from 2 employees to over 100 in just 5 years. This year, Luke wanted to double his workforce in Britain, but Labour's jobs tax is forcing him to look abroad. Whilst our competitors benefit, our communities at home are missing out. So why has the Secretary of State failed to protect them from Labour's jobs tax?
I can assure the business that he is referring to that they will have an economic environment that is not only having the foundations of our economy fixed, but it is facing the future. And the very fact that so many people from globally and organisations around the world are now building out in the UK shows that we have the best regulatory, the best legislative and the best economic environment to invest in Britain and thrive as a tech sector into the future. Thank goodness it's this government doing it and not the decline offered by his government of the past.
Mr. Speaker, Luke says Labour's jobs tax is a huge blow to Britain's tech sector, and he is absolutely right. Jobs are being destroyed, investment is down, and our wealth creators are leaving the country. Why is the Secretary of State not clearing up the Chancellor's mess?
I'm not sure if the honourable gentleman has been reading the news. We've had over £30 billion worth of tech investment in this country from around the world. He should be celebrating this, not talking us down.
It was really inspiring to meet with Saffron Electrical and Power and tour their site in Pitstone in my constituency earlier this month. They're celebrating a world first. They've obtained certification from the EU's Aviation Safety Agency for the first electric motor to power new air mobility. Will the Secretary of State join me in congratulating Saffron, and given the crucial need to decarbonise aviation, will he assure me of our commitment to innovation in this sector?
I was so happy to learn about the work that Saffron is doing. They are leading the world when it comes to electric motors for the aviation sector. The first, in fact, to receive certification from the EU Aviation Safety Agency for powering the generation of air mobility into the future. So yes, this is a government that is supporting that kind of innovation and making sure that it is leading the world for innovation, job creation, wealth creation for our country, and solving the big challenges the world faces into the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I recently spoke at a United Nations event hosted by the French, which looked at how pornography and extreme content is contributing to misogynistic and toxic behaviour towards women. So can he please tell us what this government is proposing to do to implement the recent recommendations of the report commissioned by the previous government?
I'm grateful for her question. She raises a very important point. I've met with Baroness Burton, the author of the report, and I'm seeking ways to make sure that the issues that she raised in it are acted upon.
Beckenham and Penge is where local lad David Bowie launched his music career, and today it is home to a vibrant, talented network of community of creatives whose work is increasingly sought after by AI companies. They deserve a just deal to provide fair pay for my constituents and the legal certainty required to encourage AI investment. What steps is the Minister taking to deliver this?
We are a creative content superpower in this country, and we will do absolutely nothing to undermine it. We want to make sure that people are properly remunerated for their work and make sure that AI companies have access to the high-quality data that they need to be able to deploy effectively in this country.
Jeremy Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister can see that the whole House has filled up out of concern at the atrocious mobile phone signal in Godalming and Cranley High Streets, and in Bramley, Shamley Green and Peaslake. So now spring is in the air. Will he visit Cranley to see for himself just what a problem this is?
Well, I was in Pizza Express in Godalming only a couple of weeks ago, and the mobile signal was absolutely shocking. I couldn't find my way to Busbridge Town Hall, Village Hall. I'm not sure whether the MP's rubbish or the Telecoms Minister.
In which case, we'll move on to Prime Minister's questions. John Slinger.
Question number 1, please, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today's spring statement will showcase a government going further and faster on the economy, green-lighting the Lower Thames crossing, investing £2 million for 18,000 affordable homes for working families, 60,000 young people being trained the next generation of construction workers, and fixing millions of potholes. We're undoing a decade of stagnation, delivering jobs and opportunities for working people and securing Britain's future. Mr. Speaker, tomorrow I'll meet President Macron in Paris to discuss further our efforts to secure a lasting peace in Ukraine. And may I welcome the delegation from Bring Back Kids initiative to the gallery. The abduction of Ukrainian children is grotesque. And the UK will play our full part to bring them home. It's a stark reminder that any peace settlement must see Russia held accountable for their deplorable actions. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under this Labour government, NHS waiting lists are down 5 months in a row. And the Hospital of St Cross in my constituency of Rugby is playing its part. But many of my constituents remain concerned about the long waits in A&E that they're experiencing that we inherited from the Conservatives, especially those who have to travel to the General Hospital in Coventry. So will the Prime Minister set out how our plan for change to bring the NHS back into the heart of government will help us to support the front line, deliver better emergency care closer to the community that our constituents have long called for?
Mr. Speaker, our plan for change already cut NHS waiting lists by almost 200,000. That's 5 months in a row during the winter months. The local trust waiting lists in his area are down 93%, and he's doing a great job for his community. We've already delivered 2 million extra appointments that we promised because of the record investment in the budget. The party opposite can't have it both ways. If they welcome NHS investment, they can't criticise raising the money to pay for it.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Beardall.
Mr. Speaker, in 30 minutes, we will hear the Chancellor's emergency budget. Even the Home Secretary's husband calls it an emergency budget. as she scrambles to fix the mess she made last October. But first, let's turn to another government minister who is making a mess of her brief, the Education Secretary. Why did Labour MPs vote against banning phones in schools last week?
Prime Minister.
Because it's completely unnecessary. I've got teenage children. Almost every school bans phones in school. They do it already. We need to concentrate on what's really important here, which is getting to the content that children shouldn't be accessing. That's where I would genuinely like to work across the House, because I think there's a huge amount of work to do. But the battle is not with schools that are already banning phones in school. The battle, and this is an important emerging battle, is to work together to ensure that we can ensure that the content that children are accessing, wherever they are, is suitable for their age.
Mr. Speaker, we can look at the content, but if the ban is unnecessary, then why is it that they've started a review? Just last week, his Education Secretary called a ban a bit gimmick, yet teachers and head teachers say the evidence already shows that schools that ban phones get better results. And he's wrong. Not all schools do this. Only 1 in 10 schools are smartphone free. So will he U-turn on this?
We need to ensure that all schools do this, but the vast majority do. It is really important that we focus on the battle we have to have with mobile phones, which is the content that children are able to access. And we need to ensure that that is controlled wherever they are. So it's a question of having the right battle on the right issue, not wasting time on something where almost all schools are already banning mobile phones.
Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised that the Prime Minister would say this. His own government evidence says that phones disrupt nearly half of GCSE classes every single day. Discipline is the #1 issue in many schools. Under the Conservatives, schools became twice as likely to be good or outstanding after going through our behaviour programme. So why did the Education Secretary abolish that programme?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, she talks about the record of the last government. Under their watch, a third of children started school without appropriate level development, and that is not being able to use a knife and fork. A quarter left primary school without the required standard of reading, writing and maths, and 1 in 5 was regularly absent. That's why we're pushing up standards, more information from Ofsted, transparency for parents, more interventions where schools need it.
Mr. Speaker, he's not answering the question about discipline in schools because he doesn't care about discipline in schools. Everything he does is ideological, and his decisions are costing schools so much. The national insurance hike means every state school in the country has to pay more for teachers. The Education Secretary promised to compensate schools in full for the jobs tax. Why hasn't it happened?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it was Labour that introduced academies. We pushed up standards, and this is not ideological. I'm a parent of 2 teenage children, both of whom go to a state school, so I'm vested in this, and it matters hugely to me. Nothing ideological about it. That is why we're driving up standards, as we always have done.
Mr. Speaker, he didn't answer the question about compensating schools for the jobs tax. That is costing schools a lot of money. The CEO of the United Learning Group says the grant that they gave is 20% short. Some schools will face shortfalls of up to 35%. Can he guarantee that no teacher will lose their job as a result of his jobs tax?
Mr. Speaker, with this government at the budget that put a record amount into our schools, just as we put a record amount into our NHS and into our public services, we were utterly failed under the last government. But yet again, she wants all the benefits, the NHS, but she can't say how she's going to pay for it. That's what got us into the mess in the first place.
Mr. Speaker, the whole House will have heard that he could not guarantee that teachers' jobs are safe. Not only is he taxing schools, he's also lowering standards. He talks about our record. I'll tell him what our record was. Under the Conservatives, English schools shot up the international league tables, while schools in Labour-run Wales, standards fell. Academy freedoms led to the biggest improvement of standards in a generation. But the Education Secretary is attacking them with her reforms. Can the Prime Minister point to any evidence at all, that these discredited academy reforms will improve school standards?
Prime Minister.
Yes, take the example of schools going into academies. The vast majority of schools are already academies. Therefore, we need to think again about what we do about failing schools that are already academies. We need to go on to the next chapter. And they never take the big decisions, and that's why we ended up their record. Open borders, which she was the cheerleader for, a crashed economy, mortgages through the roof, the NHS on its knees, hollowed out armed forces, and what have we got already under this government? 2 million extra NHS appointments, 750 breakfast clubs, including one in her constituency, record numbers of people being returned who shouldn't be here, and fully funded increase in defence spending. That's the difference a Labour government makes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently visited Harlow College and saw the work they were doing, training the bricklayers and electricians of the future. Would the Prime Minister agree with me that the work that FE colleges like Harlow College do is vital for the house building that we need for future generations? And what will his government do to support Harlow's next generation?
Prime Minister. He's a great champion for his constituents. We are investing £600 million to train up to 60,000 more skilled house builders so we can support the next generation and deliver 1.5 million new homes. We're creating technical excellence colleges and investing in Stansted Airport, creating 5,000 jobs nearby, which will create more opportunities for young people in Harlow.
Leader of Liberal Democrats, Red David.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The British drama Adolescence has shone a much-needed spotlight on the enormous damage being done by social media to the minds of many of our young people, especially teenage boys. We've argued social media giants should be much more toughly regulated and pay more tax so we can defend our young people from this harm. But we've had disturbing reports that the government is considering scrapping the digital services tax and watering down Britain's online safety legislation to appease President Trump and his co-president, Elon Musk. So will the Prime Minister today categorically rule out both of these things and make it clear that he will guarantee that British laws on tax and social media will be written in this House and not the White House?
Well, yes, of course, as he well knows. On the point he makes about online safety, it is important. There are new measures coming in the next few months which are very important under the Act, and we need to see whether we can go further on this issue, because there are concerns as to whether they go far enough. But will the laws be made in this place? Of course they will.
Red David.
Well, I'm grateful for the Prime Minister's reply on the social media laws, but he didn't answer the point on the digital services tax, and we will come back to that. But moving on, Mr. Speaker, after President Trump's national security advisor accidentally added a journalist to a group chat that was discussing military action in Yemen, and given, I think, all the concerns that we share about President Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin and J.D. Vance's insulting disdain for Britain and our armed forces, will the Prime Minister make it clear that he will order an urgent review into the security of the intelligence that we share with the United States?
Mr. Speaker, we work with the United States on a daily basis, and I think the honourable gentleman would like to think of himself as sort of reasonable, and when he's not jumping in Windermere, quite serious. But unpicking our relations with the US on defence and security is neither responsible nor serious.
So, judges.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Medina from Lyminge in my constituency is registered blind, and she recently told me how she had been failed by the broken social security system left behind by the Conservatives. She faced great difficulties in getting support from access to work, which is essential across my Ashford constituency, and was not helped to find paid employment. It is so important that disabled people who want to work are supported to do so. What is the Prime Minister's message to Medina and others like her who have been abandoned and shut out of employment for far too long?
Every person should have the right to work, and we will always protect the most severely disabled and those with lifelong health conditions. For Medina and the 200,000 others like her who can work and want to work, we need to support them. And that's why we're investing £1 billion in personalised tailoring employment programmes and introducing the right to try work guarantee. The party opposite presided over a failed system that didn't help them and then blamed them. We will never do that.
Stephen Flynn. Mr. Speaker, those who know me well know that I don't talk of this often, but for half of my adult life I was physically disabled. Indeed, when I first walked through the doors of this here chamber, I did so with a crutch in my right arm to support my body weight. I know how it feels. Right now in Scotland, some 55% of children living in poverty have a member of their household who is a disabled person. So can the Prime Minister explain to me, can the Prime Minister explain to those children how the Labour Party making mum and dad poorer will lift them out of poverty?
Well, I'm grateful to him for sharing his personal experience on this and his right to do so. My family has had living with disability for many years as well, so I do understand the human element of this. We do need to give support to those that need it. We do need to help those who want to work into work, and we need to be clear that those who can work should work. In England, we inherited a failed system that couldn't be defended, but it's also failing in Scotland. 84,000 young Scots, he focuses on young people, that's 15% of young Scots not in employment, education or training. That is terrible. Almost 300,000 Scots economically inactive due to temporary or long-term illness. Now what we're doing is taking the steps to help people into work, £1 billion of employment support. They have record funding under the government, under the budget. What are they going to do to help the young Scots who have been failed by their government?
Andrew Ranger. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Wrexham and Flintshire Investment Zone is one of the flagship examples of how when this government talks about kick-starting economic growth, it means it. This £160 million plan will breathe new life into the local economy, create 6,000 good local jobs, meaning that for young people in Wrexham, they will be able to find more opportunities on their doorstep. Will the Prime Minister join with me in welcoming this important development for North Wales and the potential it unlocks?
Well, it is really important that we unleash the economic potential of North Wales, including kick-starting the investment zone, backed by major businesses, Mr. Speaker, like Airbus and JCB, to leverage £1 billion of private investment, investing £975 million to benefit aerospace workers at Broughton, where I met the fantastic young workers there, and securing £1 billion investment in Shotton Mill, securing 300 jobs on Deeside. And we put a record amount of money into the Welsh Government at the budget, a budget decision which was opposed by Plaid.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Question number 3, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
The Right Honourable Member asks about shale gas. There are very real economic and environmental consequences to fracking, and communities have clearly said no.
Sir Julian.
I'm sorry, but that answer had nothing to do with my question, which was to ask why the government are ordering the permanent sealing of Britain's only 2 shale gas wells. The government is perfectly entitled on environmental grounds to not exploit such wells in normal conditions. But does he not recognise that in a desperate situation such as an international conflict where other sources of power were cut off from us, taking a decision now to concrete these things over so that a future government could not use them is an extremely irresponsible and reckless...
He knows there are real consequences of fracking, as I've set out. But what we need to do to secure our independence and lower bills and the next generation of jobs is move at speed to renewable energy. And that's why I'm pleased there's record investment coming into renewable energy, so that tyrants like Putin can't put his boot on our throat. Now, if the party opposite don't want to support that investment, they should say so.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Prime Minister join me in thanking colleagues from across the House and the excellent clerks and staff who have spent the last few months working on the Assisted Dying Bill Committee? And would he agree with me that if the law is to change on assisted dying, it's extremely important that it is implemented as soon as it is safe and practicable to do so?
Can I congratulate all colleagues working on this bill and taking part in the debate. It is an important issue on which there are different views across the House and within parties. The bill is a matter for the House, but it is the government's role to ensure every piece of legislation that passes through Parliament is effective and workable. So we'll continue to work with my honourable friend as the bill sponsor to do that. In the same way, Mr. Speaker, we would for every private member's bill which passes second reading, and if Parliament chooses to pass this bill, the government will implement it in a way that is safe and practicable.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Acorns Children's Hospice provides compassionate care to very young cancer patients and their families across Bromsgrove and the villages, yet it faces a staggering £416,000 increase in national insurance contributions as a result of choices made by this government. With no exemption for hospices and no uplift in non-capital funding, this means that the charity will have to draw from charitable donations made by the public, and this will affect frontline services. This is not right. Will the Prime Minister take this opportunity to right this wrong and exempt hospices from this tax?
We are investing £100 million for adult and children's hospices to improve facilities, equipment and accommodation, as well as £26 million in funding through the Children's Hospice Grant. But their cries and moaning would have a lot more value if they started their questions with an apology for crashing the economy in the first place.
Jacob Collier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Roads in Burton, Uttoxeter and across Staffordshire are littered with potholes. Local people are forking out thousands because of the Conservatives' neglect and incompetence. And that's despite this Labour government giving Tory Staffordshire County Council £39 million to get the job done. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that the people of Staffordshire deserve better than roads with more dimples than a Staffordshire oatcake?
Prime Minister.
Look, he's right, potholes are a real nuisance, and if you're using your car for work or your van and you hit a pothole, you're looking at a bill of several £100, which is unbudgeted for so many working families. That's why we're handing the West Midlands Combined Authority an additional £8.6 million to help repair their roads, part of a record £1.6 billion invested across the country. On top of that, Mr. Speaker, every council must now publish how many potholes they've filled, so we can show that we're making progress and that we're delivering something that didn't happen under last government.
John Cooper.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. When he was Director of Public Prosecutions, the right honourable gentleman would not, I think, have sat comfortably in the cabinet of Prime Minister Cameron. But incredibly, in Scotland, we have a situation where the head of prosecutions there, the Lord Advocate, does sit in cabinet. This has been thrown into sharp focus lately with a police probe into the finances of the SNP. It's further been thrown into sharp focus because ultimately, although not personally involved, the Lord Advocate does ultimately sit at the head of the investigation into the former First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon. She faced potential criminal charges. This situation has been created by the SNP. They will not fix it. Does it sit with this House to amend this situation?
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to this is a really important issue, and Labour in Scotland have been clear that they'd separate this role. That's the right thing to do for the reasons that have just been articulated. It's the obvious thing to do, and that's obviously what we do in England and Wales. Now, there have been calls for review on this since 2021, but the SNP has not acted fast on those reviews. They really do need to bring forward proposals now to deal with the problems been sitting there for a very, very long time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister in welcoming the delegation from Bring Back Kids, who are trying to return the tens of thousands of children abducted by Vladimir Putin, an act of pure evil. The Prime Minister will be aware that they've been working with the Yale University Humanitarian Lab, who were tracking thousands of those children inside Russia until recently. I say until recently because they've had their long-term funding removed. Will we consider using our existing contributions to the Partnership Fund for a Resilient Ukraine to restore that important work that they're doing, and in doing so restore the hope that those children can be returned to their anguished families?
Prime Minister. Well, I'm grateful to him for emphasising this again. Russia's abduction of Ukrainian children is sickening, and I think across the House we would all agree on that. A peace settlement in Ukraine must see Russia held to account and the children reunited with their families. And in specific reference to his question, the UK is playing our full part in international efforts, including funding the Bring Kids Back initiative through the Partnership Fund for a Resilient Ukraine. And I want to reassure the whole House we'll do everything we can to see these children returned and reintegrated as safely and as quickly as is possible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The 7-year-old adoptive daughter of my constituent Sarah suffered immense trauma in her early years. Thanks to support from the Adoption and Special Guardianship Support Fund, she's been able to access much needed therapy that's helped her progress. But she and thousands of others don't know if they'll be able to get more help, because in just 5 days that fund ends and ministers have repeatedly refused to confirm whether it will continue. So can the Prime Minister give a cast iron guarantee to vulnerable children, adoptive parents and kinship carers that he won't cut this fund, and so that, in Sarah's words, she can give her daughter the absolute best second chance in life she deserves?
Well, we will set out details just as soon as we can on the basis of the principles that I set out earlier. The scheme overall, in terms of welfare, is not defendable on terms, but it must be a scheme that supports those that need it, and the details will be set out.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. While our nation was being engulfed last year by racist riots in Slough, Christians, Hindus, Jews, Sikhs, people of faith and no faith openly declared that if anybody tried to attack a mosque in our town, we'd stand in solidarity with our local Muslim community to protect it. However, since then, many have become more fearful with a rise in Islamophobic attacks, including this month at a mosque in Aberdeen. So can my right honourable friend the Prime Minister confirm to the country what steps is the government taking to tackle such hate crime and promote community cohesion so that those seeking to divide our British society are not allowed to succeed?
Well, I thank him for his question. He does great work to bring our communities together, especially in Slough. Look, any form of racial or religious-based hatred is abhorrent and has no place in society. We have set aside over £50 million to protect faith communities and freedom of worship. That's the right thing to do. It's a shame that we have to do it. And our £15 million Community Recovery Fund has been supporting communities affected by the disorder last summer. Again, the right thing to do, but it's a shame that we have to do it.
Sir Roger Gale.
Mr. Speaker, the problems faced by Heathrow earlier in the week have highlighted again the fact that since the closure of Manston Airport in Kent, South East lacks a major diversion facility. Now, one diversion facility would not, of course, have compensated for the closure of Heathrow, a major hub airport. But would the Prime Minister agree that with the reopening of Manston planned for October 2028, there will be a significant contribution to resilience of aviation in the South East?
Well, look, he's right to raise the concern about the situation in Heathrow. I think everybody is very concerned by what happened last week. There are clearly questions that need to be answered on a number of fronts in relation to what happened, and an investigation is ongoing. But I'm not going to announce particular parts of our policy and strategy here at this stage.
Irene Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my constituency of North Ayrshire and Arran, the SNP ferry fiasco is having a devastating social and economic impact on our Drawson and the Isle of Arran. As well as building a Calmac ferry that doesn't fit into the existing harbour, the Fraser of Allender Institute estimates that the disrupted ferries cost the Isle of Arran £170,000 of lost revenue per day. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that the SNP government needs to find a rapid solution to swiftly address this serious situation?
I thank her for fighting SNP incompetence on behalf of her constituents. yet again the SNP are failing island communities. Hospital appointments are being missed and livelihoods destroyed. And Scotland has a proud history of shipbuilding and engineering. The SNP should be supporting Scottish workers and focusing on delivering for our communities.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Camphor Magna in my constituency is proposed as a site for a new energy from waste incinerator, which will burn 260,000 tonnes of waste a year, more than the whole of Dorset's use. And I'm concerned that as we reduce our levels of waste with the brilliant new plans to recycle more, we're going to end up having to feed the monster. The area already has 95% of the capacity, so does the Prime Minister agree with me that we shouldn't allow new plants where we already have sufficient capacity, or where carbon capture is not going to be included?
I hope she'll forgive me. The details of the particular incinerator she speaks of, I don't know the details. I'm not across that. But I will make sure that she gets an answer to her question in written form as soon as possible.
Chris MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I commend my right honourable friend for his leadership on Ukraine, showing that the UK is once again at the forefront of protecting democratic freedoms. Does he agree with me that as our defence spending increases, we need to support our supply chain companies to increase their capability, creating good jobs and apprenticeships in places like Stockton North and across the country? And will he meet with me and our Teesside Defence and Innovation Cluster that I've established, which is helping to create that new defence capability for the UK?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this is a once-in-a-generation moment for security of our country and our continent. We've set out that fully funded increase in defence spending to 2.5% in 2027, the biggest sustained boost since the Cold War. But that must benefit British jobs and British businesses, and that's why I'll make sure that he gets the meeting that he wants with the relevant minister.
Jerome Mayo.
In October last year, the Chancellor delivered a massive tax, borrow and spend budget. Now her plans have collapsed around her ears with an emergency budget to cut that spending. So has the time now come, Mr. Speaker, for the Prime Minister to state in public that he has full confidence in the Chancellor?
I have full confidence in the Chancellor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Albion Rovers has been a football institution in Coatbridge since 1882. However, following relegation and the lack of financial support for teams leaving professional leagues, it now faces a deeply perilous situation, risking the very future of one of Scotland's oldest football clubs. Does my right honourable friend agree that clubs like Albion Rovers are integral to the fabric of our communities? And will he join me in encouraging all parties to be solution focused on this matter and encourage football authorities to strengthen our clubs in the lower leagues to help protect their future?
Well, he's a superb local champion, and regardless of which club any of us support, they share a love of the game, and they are at the heart of our communities, and Albion Rovers is exactly that, a huge point of local pride, and I'd encourage all efforts to secure the future of the club.
Final question, Dr. Kieran Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're joined in Parliament today by Katie Brett, whose 16-year-old sister Sasha was raped and stabbed to death. Aisha Hussain, whose cousin Jan, was killed by a sex offender and stored her body in a freezer. Paula Hudgell, whose adopted son Tony lost his lower legs as a result of child cruelty, and Becky and Glenn Ewens, whose daughter Violet Grace was killed by a hit-and-run driver who spent barely more time in prison than she was alive. Supporting them are Jeremy and Susan Everard, who received justice for the murder of their daughter, Sarah, but who know too many others do not. They've come together to say with one voice that it's time for us to start ensuring sentences truly deliver justice for victims and their families. Would the Prime Minister agree to meeting with them in future to hear their stories firsthand?
Well, can I thank him for raising this issue? The courage of these campaigners after simply appalling cases is astounding, and I find it humbling. I'm pleased the Minister for Victims will be meeting the group, I think, today, and I look forward to meeting them in the future, because we must prioritise victims and make sure sentences punish offenders and protect the public. So thank him for raising this really important set of cases.
That completes Prime Minister's questions with that front bench changeover. Right, we now come to the spring statement. Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves.
Mr. Speaker, this Labour government was elected to bring change to our country, to provide security for working people and to deliver a decade of national renewal. That work began in July, and I am proud of what we have delivered in just 9 months. Restoring stability to our public finances, giving the Bank of England the foundation to cut interest rates 3 times since the general election, rebuilding our public services with record investment in our NHS, bringing waiting lists down for 5 months in a row, and increasing the national living wage to give 3 million people a pay rise from next week. Now our task is to secure Britain's future in a world that is changing before our eyes. The threat facing our continent was transformed when Putin invaded Ukraine. It has since escalated further and will continue to evolve rapidly. At the same time, the global economy has become more uncertain, bringing insecurity at home as trading patterns become more unstable and borrowing costs rise for many major economies. Mr. Speaker, the job of a responsible government is not simply to watch this change. This moment demands an active government, a government not stepping back but stepping up, a government on the side of working people, helping Britain to reach its potential. And Mr. Speaker, we have the strength to do just that. As one of the world's largest economies, an ally to trading partners across the globe, and a hub for global innovation. These strengths and the progress that we have made so far mean that we can act quickly and decisively in a more uncertain world to secure Britain's future and to deliver prosperity for working people. Mr. Speaker, as I set out at the budget last year, I am today returning to the House to provide an update on our public finances, supported by a new forecast from the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility. Ahead of a full spending review in June, I will then return to the House in the autumn to deliver a budget in line with our commitment to deliver just one major fiscal event a year. So let me now turn to the OBR's forecasts. And I want to thank Richard Hughes and his team for their dedicated work. The increased global uncertainty has had 2 consequences. First, on our public finances, and second, on our economy. I will take each in turn. In the autumn, I set out our new fiscal rules that would guide this government. These fiscal rules are non-negotiable. They are the embodiment of this government's unwavering commitment to bring stability to our economy and to ensure security for working people. Because the British people have seen what happens when a government borrows beyond their means. The mini-budget delivered by the party opposite resulted in higher bills, in higher rents and higher mortgages. And Mr. Speaker, it was not the wealthy who suffered most when they crushed the economy, it was ordinary working people. And they continue to feel the effects 2.5 years later of the damage that the party opposite did. Now let me be clear. There is nothing progressive, there is nothing Labour about working people paying the price for economic irresponsibility. The British people put their trust in this Labour government because they knew that I would never take risks with the public finances, that we would never do anything to put household finances in danger, and we must earn that trust every single day. The 2 rules that I set out at the budget were first, our stability rule, which ensures that public spending is under control, balancing the current budget by 2029-30, so that day-to-day spending is met by tax receipts.
Second, our investment rule, to drive growth in the economy, ensuring that net financial debt falls by the end of the forecast period, while enabling us to invest alongside business. Turning first to the stability rule. The OBR's forecast shows that before the steps that I will take in this statement, the current budget would have been in deficit by £4.1 billion in 2029-30, having been in surplus by £9.9 billion in the autumn, as the UK, alongside our international peers like France and Germany, has seen the cost of borrowing rise during this period of heightened uncertainty in global markets. As a result of the steps that I am taking today, I can confirm that I have restored in full our headroom against the stability rule, moving from a deficit of £36.1 billion in 2025-26 and £13.4 billion in 2026-27 to a surplus of £6.0 billion in 27-28, £7.1 billion in 2028-29, and a surplus of £9.9 billion in 2029-30. That compares to the headroom left by the previous government of just £6.5 billion. That means we are continuing to meet the stability rule 2 years early, building resilience to shocks in this, a more uncertain world. The OBR forecast that the investment rule is also met 2 years early, with net financial debt of 82.9% of GDP in 25-26 and 83.5% in 26-27, before falling to 83.4% in 27-28, in 83.2% in 2028-29, and then to 82.7% in 2029-30, providing headroom of £15.1 billion in the final year of the forecast, broadly unchanged from the autumn. After the last government doubled the national debt, after they doubled the national debt interest payments now stand at £105.2 billion this year. Mr. Speaker, that is more than we allocate to Defence, the Home Office and the Ministry of Justice combined. That is the legacy of the party opposite. So the responsible choice is to reduce our levels of debt and borrowing in the years ahead, so that we can spend more on the priorities of working people, and that is exactly what this government will do. Mr. Speaker, I said that our fiscal rules were non-negotiable, and I meant it. I will always deliver economic stability, and I will always put working people first. I said it at the election, I said it at the budget, and I say it again today. Let me now set out the steps that the government has taken. At the budget, we protected working people by keeping our promise not to raise their rates of national insurance, income tax or VAT. At the same time, we began to rebuild our public services after the party opposite left a £22 billion black hole in our public finances. Ours were the right choices for stability and the right choices for renewal, funded by the decisions that we took on tax. As I promised in the autumn, this statement does not contain any further tax increases. But when working people are paying their taxes while still struggling with the cost of living, it cannot be right that others are still evading what they rightly owe in tax. In the budget, I delivered the most ambitious package of measures that we have ever seen to cut down on tax evasion, raising £6.5 billion per year by the end of the forecast. Today, I go further, continuing our investment in cutting-edge technology, investing in the HMRC's capacity to crack down on tax avoidance, and setting out plans to increase the number of tax fraudsters charged every year by 20%. These changes raise a further £1 billion, taking the total revenue raised from reducing tax evasion under this Labour government to £7.5 billion. These figures are verified by the Office for Budget Responsibility, and I want to thank my honourable friend, the Exchequer Secretary, for his continued work in this area. Mr. Speaker, last week my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, set out this government's plans to reform the welfare system. The Labour Party is the party of work. We believe that if you can work, you should work. But if you can't work, you should be properly supported. This government inherited a broken system. More than 1,000 people every day are qualifying for personal independence payments. 1 in 8 young people are not in employment, education or training. If we do narration, that cannot be right, and we will not stand for it. It is a waste of their potential and it is a waste of their futures, and we will change it. As my right honourable friend said in her statement last week, the final costings would be subject to the OBR's assessment. Today, the OBR have said that they estimate that the package will save £4.8 billion in the welfare budget, reflecting their judgments on behavioural effects and wider factors. This also reflects final adjustments to the overall package, consistent with the Secretary of State's statement last week and the Government's Pathways to Work Green Paper. The Universal Credit Standard Allowance will increase from £92 per week in 25-26 to £106 a week by 29-30, while the Universal Credit Health element will be cut for new claimants by around 50% and then frozen. On top of this, we are investing £1 billion to provide guaranteed, personalised employment support to help people back into work. And £400 million to support the Department for Work and Pensions and our job centres to deliver these changes effectively and fairly, taking total savings after that to the package to £3.4 billion. While spending on disability and sickness benefits will continue to rise, these plans mean that welfare spending as a share of GDP will fall between 2026 and the end of the forecast period, very different to what we inherited from the party opposite. We are reforming our welfare system, making it more sustainable, protecting the most vulnerable, and most importantly, supporting more people back into secure work, lifting them out of poverty. Mr. Speaker, at the budget, I fixed the foundations of our economy to deliver on the promise of change. That work has already begun. 2 million extra appointments in our NHS. Waiting lists down. New breakfast clubs opening across England. The largest settlements in real terms for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland in the history of devolution. Asylum costs falling, promises made, promises kept, and every single one of them opposed by the parties opposite. At the budget, alongside providing an increase in funding for this year and next, I set the envelope for the spending review, which we will deliver in June, led by my right honourable friend, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, to set departmental budgets until 28-29 for day-to-day spending and until 2029-30 for capital spending. Today I am reflecting 2 steps that we have taken on our spending plans. First, because we are living in an uncertain world, as the Prime Minister has set out, we will increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, reducing overseas aid to 0.3% of gross national income. This means we save £2.6 billion in day-to-day spending in 2029-30 to fund our more capital-intensive defence commitments. Second, in recent months, we have begun to fundamentally reform the British state, driving efficiency and productivity across government, to deliver tangible savings and improve services across our country. Earlier the Prime Minister set out plans to abolish the arm's-length body NHS England and ensure that that money goes directly to improving the service for patients. My right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, is driving forward vital reforms to increase NHS productivity, bearing down on costly agency spend to save money so that we can improve patient care. And my right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, is taking forward work to significantly reduce the costs of running government by 15%, worth £2 billion by the end of the decade. This work shows that we can make our state leaner and more agile, delivering more resources to the front line, while ensuring that we control day-to-day spending to meet our fiscal rules. Today, I build on that work by bringing forward £3.25 billion of investment to deliver the reforms that our public services need through a new transformation fund. That is money brought forward now to bring down the costs of running government by the end of the forecast period, by making public services more efficient, more productive, and more focused on the user. I can confirm today the first allocations from this fund, including funding for voluntary exit schemes to reduce the size of the civil service, pioneering AI tools to modernise the state, investment in technology for the Ministry of Justice to deliver probation services more effectively, and upfront investment so we can support more children into foster care to give them the best possible start in life and reduce cost pressures in the future. Our work to make government leaner, more productive and more efficient will help deliver a further £3.5 billion of day-to-day savings by 2029-30. Overall, day-to-day spending will be reduced by £6.1 billion in 2029-30, and it will now grow by an average of 1.2% a year above inflation, compared to 1.3% in the autumn. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm to the House that day-to-day spending will increase in real terms above inflation in every single year of the forecast. And in the spending review, apart from the reductions in overseas aid, day-to-day spending across government has been fully protected. I can also confirm our approach to capital investment. In the autumn budget, I announced £100 billion of additional capital spending to crowd in investment from the private sector, to fix our crumbling infrastructure, and to create jobs in every corner of our country. Today, I am not cutting capital spending, as the party opposite did, time and time again, because that choked off growth, and it left our school roofs literally crumbling. That was the wrong choice. It was the irresponsible choice. It was the Tory choice. Today, I am instead increasing capital spending by an average of £2 billion per year compared with the autumn, to drive growth in our economy and to deliver in full our vital commitments on defence. This government will ensure that every pound we spend will deliver for the British people by increasing productivity, driving growth in our economy and improving our frontline public services. Mr. Speaker, let me turn now to the impact of increased uncertainty on our economy. To deliver economic stability, we must work closely with the Bank of England, supporting the Independent Monetary Policy Committee to meet their 2% inflation target. There have been 3 interest rate cuts since the general election, and today's data showed that inflation fell in February. Having peaked at 11% under the previous government, the OBR forecast that CPI inflation will average 3.2% this year before falling rapidly to 2.1% in 2026 and meeting the 2% target from 2027 onwards, giving families and businesses the security that they need and providing our economy with the stable platform it needs to grow. Mr. Speaker, earlier this month, the OECD downgraded this year's growth forecast for every G7 economy, including the UK. And the OBR have today revised down our growth forecast for 2025, from 2% in the autumn to 1% today. I am not satisfied with these numbers, and that is why we on this side of the House are serious about taking the action needed to grow our economy. Backing the builders, not the blockers, with a 3rd runway at Heathrow Airport and the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. Increasing investment with reforms to our pension system and a new national wealth fund, and tearing down regulatory barriers in every sector of our economy. That is a serious plan for growth. That is a serious plan to improve living standards. That is a serious plan to renew our country. Mr. Speaker, A changing world presents challenges, but it also presents new opportunities for new jobs and new contracts in our world-class defence industrial centres, from Belfast to Deeside and from Plymouth to Rosyth. In February, the Prime Minister set out our government's commitment to increase spending on defence to 2.5% of GDP from April 2027, the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War, with an ambition to spend 3% of GDP on defence in the next Parliament. That was the right decision in a more insecure world, putting an extra £6.4 billion into defence spending by 2027. But we have to move quickly in this changing world, and that starts with investment. So today I can confirm that I will provide an additional £2.2 billion for the Ministry of Defence in the next financial year, a further down payment on our plans to deliver 2.5% of GDP by 2027. This additional investment is not just about increasing our national security, but increasing our economic security too. As defence spending rises, I want the whole country to feel its benefits. So I will now set out the immediate steps that we are taking to boost Britain's defence industry and to make the UK a defence industrial superpower. We will spend a minimum of 10% of the Ministry of Defence's equipment budget on new novel technologies, including drones and AI-enabled technology, driving forward advanced manufacturing production in places like Glasgow, in Derby and in Newport, creating demand for highly skilled engineers and scientists, and delivering new business opportunities for UK tech firms and start-ups. We will establish a protected budget of £400 million within the Ministry of Defence, a budget that will rise over time for UK defence innovation, with a clear mandate to bring innovative technology to the front line at speed. And we will reform our broken defence procurement system, making it quicker, more agile and more streamlined, and giving small businesses across the UK better access to Ministry of Defence contracts, something welcomed by the Federation of Small Businesses. We will take forward our plan for Barrow, a town at the heart of our nuclear security, working with my honourable friend, the member for Barrow and Furness, and providing £200 million, supporting the creation of thousands of jobs there. We will regenerate Portsmouth Naval Base, securing its future, as called for by my honourable friend, the member for Portsmouth South. We will secure better homes for thousands of military families, the homes that they deserve denied to them by the previous governments. Homes for our military families in constituencies of my honourable friends for Plymouth Moorview, Plymouth Sutton and Devonport, York Outer and in Aldershot. That is the difference that this Labour government is making. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we will provide £2 billion of increased capacity for UK export finance to provide loans for overseas buyers of UK defence goods and services, because I want to do more with our defence budget so we can buy and make and sell things here in Britain. Giving further opportunities for our world-leading defence companies and those who work in them to grow and create jobs here in Britain as military spending rightly increases all across Europe. To oversee all of this vital work, my right honourable friend, the Defence Secretary, and I will establish a new Defence Growth Board to maximise the benefits from every pound of taxpayers' money that we spend. And we will put defence at the heart of our modern industrial strategy to drive innovation that can deliver huge benefits back into the British economy. Mr. Speaker, that is how we make our country a defence industrial superpower. So the skills of the future, the jobs of the future, and the opportunities of the future can be found right here in the United Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, as the previous government learned to their detriment, there are no shortcuts to economic growth. It will take long-term decisions. It will take hard yards. It will take time for the reforms that we are introducing to be felt in the everyday economy. It is right that the Office for Budget Responsibility consider the evidence and look carefully at measures before recognising a growth impact in their forecast. But, Mr. Speaker, I can announce to the House that the OBR have considered and have scored one of the central planks of our plan for growth. In my first week as Chancellor, I announced that we were pursuing the most ambitious set of planning reforms in decades to get Britain building again. And in December, we published changes to the National Planning Policy Framework, driven forward tirelessly by my right honourable friend, the Deputy Prime Minister. Reintroducing mandatory housing targets and bringing grey belt land into scope. The OBR have today concluded that these reforms will permanently increase the level of real GDP by 0.2% in 29-30, an additional £6.8 billion for our economy, and by 0.4% of GDP within 10 years, an additional £15.1 billion in our British economy. Mr. Speaker, that is the biggest positive growth impact that the OBR have ever reflected in their forecast for a policy with no fiscal cost. And taken together with our plans to increase capital spending that we set out in the budget last year, this government's policies will increase the level of real GDP by 0.6% in the next 10 years. Mr. Speaker, that is the difference that this Labour government is making. Policies to grow our economy. Promises by a Labour government, delivered by a Labour government, opposed by the parties opposite. Mr. Speaker, the planning system that we inherited was far too slow. The OBR have concluded that our reforms will lead to house building reaching a 40-year high. 305,000 homes a year by the end of the forecast period. And changes to the National Planning Policy Framework alone will help build over 1.3 million homes in the UK over the next 5 years, taking us within touching distance of delivering our manifesto promise to build 1.5 million homes in England in this Parliament. Homes promised by this Labour government, homes built by this Labour government, homes opposed by the parties opposite. The impact on our economy goes further still. I said at the election that we could not simply tax and spend our way to prosperity. We need economic growth. So I can today confirm that the effect of our growth policies, including our planning reforms, means an additional £3.4 billion to support our public finances and our public services by 2029-30. The proceeds of growth, promised by this Labour government, delivered by this Labour government, opposed by the parties opposite. Mr. Speaker, earlier this week, we provided an additional £2 billion of investment in social and affordable homes next year, delivering up to 18,000 new homes and allowing local areas to bid for new development across our country, including sites in Thanet, in Sunderland and in Swindon. More security for families across our country, promised by this Labour government, delivered by this Labour government and opposed by the parties opposite. And to build these new homes, we need people with the right skills. Earlier this week, my right honourable friend, the Education Secretary, announced more than £600 million to train up 60,000 more construction workers, including with 10 new technical excellence colleges across every region of our country, giving working people the chance to fulfil their potential. New opportunities for our young people, promised by this Labour government, delivered by this Labour government, opposed by the parties opposite. Mr. Speaker, all this is just the start. The Planning and Infrastructure Bill passed its second reading on Monday. No thanks to the parties opposite. Once this bill completes its passage, it will help deliver the homes and infrastructure our country badly needs. And I say to the parties opposite, the British people will be watching. Because if the parties opposite don't support these reforms, let us be clear about what that means. They are opposing economic growth. They are opposing families. They are opposing good jobs across our country. We on this side are clear about whose side we are on. The parties opposite must decide too. This Labour government is taking the right decisions now to secure Britain's future. And today I can confirm to the House that the OBR have upgraded their growth forecast next year and every single year thereafter. With GDP growth of 1.9% in 2026, of 1.8% in 2027, 1.7% in 2028 and 1.8% in 2029. Mr. Speaker, by the end of the forecast, our economy is larger compared to the OBR's forecast at the time of the budget. That is the difference that this Labour government is making. But, Mr. Speaker, this isn't just about lines on a graph. It's about improving people's lives. Working people are still feeling the pinch after a cost of living crisis caused by the party opposite that caused interest rates and inflation to go through the roof. So I am pleased that the OBR confirmed today that real household disposable income will now grow this year at almost twice the rate expected in the autumn. Compared to the forecast in the final budget delivered by the party opposite, and after taking into account inflation, the OBR say today that people will be, on average, over £500 a year better off under this Labour government. That will mean more money in the pockets of working people, higher living standards promised by this Labour government, delivered by this Labour government, opposed by the parties opposite. Mr. Speaker, the world is changing. We can see that and we can feel it. A changing world demands a government that is on the side of working people, acting in their interest, acting in the national interest, not retreating from challenges, not stepping back, but a government with the courage to step up, to secure Britain's future, and to seize the opportunities that are out there before us. I am impatient for change. The British people are impatient for change after 14 years of failure. And we are beginning to see change happen. Our plan for change is working. Defence spending is rising. Waiting lists are falling. Wages are up. Interest rates are cut. That is the difference that this Labour government is making. And today, Mr. Speaker, the OBR confirm that our plan to get Britain building will drive growth in our economy and put more money in people's pockets. There are no quick fixes, but we have taken the right choices, returning stability to our economy after years of mismanagement by the party opposite, delivering security for our country and security for working people. That is what drives this government. That is what drives me as Chancellor. That is what drives the choices that I have set out today, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride.
Mr. Speaker, at the last budget, the Right Honourable Lady said that she would bring stability to the public finances. Stability to the public finances. But this statement, more appropriately referred to as an emergency budget, has brought her to a cold hard.
Can I just say to you, quite rightly I want to hear to the Chancellor. I now want to hear the Shadow Chancellor. I don't need any help.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This emergency budget, Mr. Speaker, has brought the Right Honourable Lady to a cold, hard reckoning. She has become very fond recently to talk about the world having changed. Well, indeed it has, Mr. Speaker. This country was growing at the fastest rate in the G7 only about a year ago. And just as the OECD and the Bank of England and other forecasters, and now we learn today, the OBR have stated, growth has been halved in this year, cut in two as a consequence of the decisions and the choices that the Right Honourable Lady made on her watch. Inflation, which was down to 2%, bang on target on the very day of the last general election under a Conservative government. We are now told this year will be running at twice the level as was forecast under ourselves in 2024. This is going to mean prices bearing down on households and on businesses right across the country because of her choices. And the OBR also says, Mr. Speaker, that unemployment will be rising this year and next year and the year after. And in fact, across the forecast period, it will not decline at all. So much for the Right Honourable Lady's back-to-work plans. And we have already seen, Mr. Speaker, what it means when it comes to controlling borrowing under this Chancellor. And yes, she has come forward now with a plan to squeeze spending later on in the forecast period. And she has, of course, told the OBR that these are the elements of spending restraint to which she will stick. But what do the markets think? And can I ask the Right Honourable Lady, given her track record, given the fact that she has failed to control spending and borrowing to date, what does she think the markets are going to make of her latest promises? But the Right Honourable Lady, Mr. Speaker, says, of course, that none of this is her fault. It is the war in Ukraine. It is President Trump. It is tariffs. It is President Putin. It is the Conservatives. It is her legacy. It is anybody but her. Well, what the British people know, Mr. Speaker, is that this is a consequence of her choices. She is the architect of her own misfortune. It was the Right Honourable Lady, Mr. Speaker, who talked down the economy, so that business surveys and confidence crashed through the floor. It was the Right Honourable Lady who confected the £22 billion black hole.
Pure fantasy.
A smokescreen that was only ever there in order to cover up for the fact that she and the Prime Minister reneged on their promises to the British people during the last general election. And a black hole that the OBR themselves, ironically at the government's behest, have said they will not legitimise. She chose to be reckless with a sliver of headroom against her fiddled targets. She borrowed and spent and taxed like it was the 1970s. Little wonder, Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor has tanked the economy. Little wonder we have an emergency budget, all because of her choices. Now, the Chancellor likes to tour the television studios and tell everybody they should be thankful that she will not be ramping up taxes in this emergency budget as she did before. But that will be cold comfort to the millions up and down the country waiting in fear and trepidation for the start of the new tax year. Buckling under the burden of tax that will be rising to the highest tax burden on her watch in the history of our country. And so could I ask the Right Honourable Lady if, when she replies in a moment, she will give that much needed reassurance, particularly to businesses, that she will not be ramping up taxes still further in the autumn. Even a basic economist, Mr. Speaker, knows that if you tax something, you get less of it. You don't need to have worked at the Bank of England for 10 years, Mr. Speaker, to know that. So what did the Chancellor tax? She taxed jobs and wealth creation. She's destroyed livelihoods, businesses clobbered, big and small companies, the backbone of our economy. Enterprise crushed on the altar of her ineptitude. The CIPD telling us a third of those businesses affected will shed labour. Morrison's losing 200 jobs, Tesco 400. Sainsbury's, 3,000 jobs lost.
Yep.
No wonder the Federation of Small Business say that outside of the pandemic, business confidence has been left at its lowest level on record. But it's not just businesses, Mr. Speaker. It's charities, it's GPs, it's pharmacists, it's those who transport children who have special educational needs, and it is hospices caring for the sick and the dying. In this House, Mr. Speaker, the Labour Party had the opportunity yesterday and last week to stop that, but they voted our amendments down. And we will never let their constituents forget it. Mr. Speaker, if you ramp up taxes, if you ramp up borrowing and spending without any commensurate improvement in productivity, it leads to growing inflation. And inflation has been increasing on this government's watch. It means that interest rates stay higher for longer. The Chancellor just now trumpeted the fact that there had been 3 interest rate cuts since the Labour Party came to office. She knows full well there should have been more than that had she managed. She knows full well, Mr. Speaker. She knows full well that interest rates are higher for longer because of the choices that she took. And this has led, Mr. Speaker, to servicing costs for our national debt, which is running at twice the defence budget. And today we have learned from the OBR that debt interest is to increase still further. None of this money, Mr. Speaker, is going to be spent on public services. It will be going down the drain. Mr. Speaker, the real black hole, Mr. Speaker, the real black hole is not the one the Chancellor invented, it is the one the Chancellor created. It's not a central problem, Mr. Speaker, the fact that this Chancellor is a gambler. Even with her fiddled fiscal targets, she left way too little headroom. And it's not the truth that whilst the Right Honourable Lady said at the last budget that that was a once-in-a-Parliament reset, she rolled the dice on a wafer-thin margin, and she lost. Reckless with her fingers crossed, she fiddled the targets and she missed them.
I'm not sure about the language we use. I think there are better words and more constructive words the Shadow Chancellor would prefer to use.
Can I just point out, thank you, Mr. Can I just point out that all of her fiscal headroom disappeared, not just some of it. In fact, she went underwater to the tune of £4.1 billion. Mr. Speaker, reeling from one fiscal event to the next is not a way to run the public finances. And breaking your fiscal rules to the extent that the Right Honourable Lady has in just 6 months is a public humiliation. Mr. Speaker, can I briefly focus on defence spending? We on this side of the House welcome the fact that, as we press the government to do, they will reach 2.5% of GDP by 2027. And we note the stepping stone along the way that the Right Honourable Lady has just announced. But we should go further than that. The 3% target should be brought forward to this Parliament. So can I ask the Right Honourable Lady, given the geopolitical tensions that she has raised, what provision has she made in her headroom, in her fiscal plans, for increasing defence spending more quickly in this Parliament if that proves necessary? And could I ask her, would she scrap the absurd Chagos deal and put that money behind our armed forces? Mr. Speaker, the economy is in a perilous state, but there was a different way. There were different choices on taxing and spending and borrowing and on productivity and on welfare. And let me just say a few words on welfare. It was the privilege of my life, Mr. Speaker, to have served as the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. And when it came to welfare reform, with that privilege came a deep responsibility. The responsibility for welfare reform to be properly thought through with a very clear plan. So I know they don't like it because it's an alien idea, Mr. Speaker, to the party opposite. So that we can be fair to the taxpayer, but equally fair to the many people up and down our country, some of whom are highly vulnerable. This was an approach on our watch that led to $5 billion of savings across the forecast period and 450,000 fewer people going on to long-term sickness and disability benefits as a direct consequence. And we would have gone further, much further, and we set out a clear plan, we set out a clear plan in our manifesto to do exactly that. But the party opposite rushed their changes. They had no plan. There was not a single mention of PIP, personal independence payments, in the Labour Party